What's the most illegal thing you've ever done without getting caught? Buying alcohol for underage people while also being underage myself. A good way to make profits in high school though. I've probably pirated thousands of dollars worth of content. Did a multi-state road trip with a bong and joints being passed around the car whole time. Looking back on it I feel like a ducking idiot. Transported stolen guns across state lines to deliver to a buyer and pawn the rest. That was the worst I've ever felt. And easily the most nerve-wracking thing I've ever done. Sitting on 2 bottles of Captain Morgan as I was pulled over for speeding. I was 19 years old, alone, driving my tiny Toyota pickup about 40 miles to a party, with 2 almost full bottles of open booze in the passenger seat. Got pulled over, had nowhere to put them, so I sat on them. Had warrants out for my arrest in a certain county in Arkansas. I was riding with a friend. Got pulled over. Shoved my wallet into a crack in the door panel. Told the officer I didn't have my ID on me. Gave the name of my best friend from high school and his birthday, which I just barely remembered. Lastly, don't think this is actually illegal but it was my finest moment. I was 18 and looking for a job. Got offered a gig smuggling a pallet of Hostess cupcakes and Twinkies into a fat camp. Job was given to me by the sister of one of the kids there. Their dad owned a little franchise Hostess store. Ran from the cops twice. Successfully each time. I'm 2-0 with the 5-0. Transporting a handgun through Canada by car. This is over 20 years ago, but it was still very illegal. I'll check the statute of limitations and get back to you. Boy, how about this weather eh? Ate 4 gummy vitamins in one day instead of the recommended 3. Well, I was a drug dealer for 20 years. Transporting live ammunition though airport security post 9/11. Not sure how it happened, but mid-flight I realized I had a pocket full of 9mm and a few 22 LRs from shooting earlier that day. Total accident. Was set to have a party at a friend's house one night. Arrived to see a cop car outside his house. Didn't have anything illegal with me so nonchalantly walked in the back door. Cop had apparently came to tell his parents that there had been reports of underage drinking in the area and that they should keep track of the neighbors as well as their own kid. People started showing up after, and I was about to go out and buy drinks around the corner because I was the only one with a fake. Went out to see a police car in the parking lot of the place, with the same officer who was at my friend's house inside. Luckily, he never saw me at my friend's house, or had any idea I was underage. I walked in, took a case of beer to the counter, gave my ID, and paid. Even said goodnight to the officer as I walked out. He had no idea. TLDR. Bought alcohol as a minor within 10 feet of an on-duty cop. Once I looked at the speedometer and saw I was going 20 over the speed limit, so I slowed down and checked the rear view. No cops. I walked into the women's changing room after swimming accidentally. Luckily there was no one showering. A bunch of showers when you walk in. Walked out immediately. No one saw. Went to the Disney website without my parents' permission. I forgot I had a bunch of drugs in my bag when I was crossing the border from Thailand into Cambodia. If you know anything about the drug laws in Thailand, you know that they aren't big on giving out a slap on the wrist for any kind of offense. I found a set of keys someone had dropped when I was walking past a warehouse one night. Later that night I went back and they opened a back door. I was in and had the entire run of the place. It was some grocery store distribution warehouse. After ducking around I made copies of HTE keys and then dropped them off in the mail slot. They never changed the locks and I was able to get back in anytime I wanted. Since I was a homeless teenager at the time, I would sneak in late at night. I found a place to sleep. I'd eat my fill of whatever I found and then would clean up the mess and be out before these guys showed up early in the morning. I lived there until I got a job that enabled me to have a place of my own. Even then I'd often sneak in, make sure I could get food for a meal, toilet paper, and then leave. This was 30 years ago and I still have the key. My friend and I allegedly stole a duck ton of cough meds from a Walmart. Used someone else's Netflix account. I used to be a drug dealer who sold everything under the sun. Now I am totally against that life. Not the drugs. The lifestyle. One time my mate Callum and I broke into this abandoned building and we wrote Ming on the wall in red spray paint, the kind that doesn't wash off. And then later we found out it was gonna be demolished the next day anyway, so we were well miffed about our graffiti being removed, so we came by the next day and there was some concrete being poured in front of the building, so we wrote the words Ming and clunged there with our fingers, and it's still there if you look closely. Mate, you should have been there, it was ducking mental. Stole a bottle of vodka off the shelf of a grocery store when I was 2 years too young to buy it. Also that other thing that I don't even think I can mention on Reddit. I stole a beer glass at a bar on my birthday because I was drunk and didn't get a piece of pie. I once peed on City Hall. A group of friends was walking home after a show. It was late. We'd been drinking. And every single one of us had misjudged how long the walk was relative to the capacity of our bladders. The boys went. Then the girls went. And we stood around making like we were looking at something interesting to hide what was happening. All the things I've seen. Drugs. Violence. Auto sports. Theft. Vandalism. None of it compares to the simple thrill of 5 minutes of relief. It was a lot of piss. Edit. City Hall happened to be the building that had a nice corner we could walk around back and not be right on the street. Smoking weed in Indiana. With how certain law enforcement handle it around here, especially in the small town I live near, you'd think the bud that was being lit up in my bowl would be the remains of their ancestors. Became a skilled shoplifter when I was in junior high. Got so good at it, I started taking orders from other kids, candy, gum, books, cologne, video games, and selling them stuff at a discount. Turned my locker into a convenience store. Turned quite a tidy profit. Robbed a drug dealer's apartment while he was out. Only took bongs and pipes. What's he gonna do? Call the cops? They stole my paraphernalia. Officers. Some friends and I spent the night before the last day of senior year driving around stealing garden gnomes for our senior prank, which would involve putting all of the gnomes on the front lawn of the school, which we thought would be hilarious for some reason. We just drove house to house and jumped out to grab whatever we could find and threw it in the back of my friend's car. We finally get enough to go to the school and get to work, and realize there's no ducking way we could actually get away with this. It would take forever and there were definitely cameras set up. So we drove down a gravel road and threw all the gnomes into a construction site while terrified and yelling at each other to shut up. We drove by a cop on the way out and I still have no idea why we didn't get stopped driving around a construction site like that. We never spoke of it again. So yeah, I'm not great at pranks. I committed genocide once. Took a whole Kleenex but I think I got rid of all the evidence. Mass murder. Killed 18 people including 5 guards. Duckers chased me all over Sarodia but never caught me. I worked at an auto parts store with no cameras years ago. During closing hours there were only 2 employees. One counting the register, the other taking out the trash. So while I took out the trash I also stole anything I needed. Rotors, pads, air fresheners, cold air intake, police scanner etc. Easily 3,000 worth of items. I did this for 2 years, then I quit and got into my career field. I do not condone stealing. I would not do it again. I was young and broke as it. Probably not the most illegal thing I've done, but my boyfriend and I have walked out of grocery stores only paying like 25% of what was in our carts. Made registration stickers for my car with Photoshop. Smuggled Bibles into North African country and distributed them to the local Christian church, less than 400 people at the time. Sex in the church parking lot. Smoked pot on the roof of the police station downtown. Also used to steal empty kegs from behind restaurants and return them for the deposit. I'm not proud but it was so easy. Stole a balloon on Free Balloon Day. Once in 3rd grade I stole a marble. I've pirated so much I'm astonished copyright trolls haven't found me yet. Then again I try to avoid public torrent sites. But when I do I try to find torrents that are under 100 cedars. 35 years ago, my GF at the time and I crossed the border at Buffalo, NY, heading to her home in Cleveland. I'm from Toronto. She had about 3/4 oz of weed in her purse. As we got a few miles from the border, she panicked, pulled out the ashtray, and wadded the weed in behind it. I offered it to put in my underwear, but she insisted. We get to the border, which was then usually where you from, where you going, have a nice day. That day, we get asked a few questions, and then pull the car over there. Guy tells us to get out, sit on the bench, and then proceeds to work the car over, lifting the hood and trunk, and then getting down on his hands and knees to look up under the glove box. My GF is sitting on the bench, squeezing my hand so hard she broke a small bone. I'm trying to remain calm, but in my head, I'm dreading how I'm going to tell her old school dad and 2 older brothers how I got their daughter little sister arrested and charged with a felony. I'm not so worried about jail. They would have killed me. Guy gets up, dusts off his knees, and says okay, you can go. I bite my tongue not to ask are you sure, but say thanks. The 2 of us get in and drive away. Not a word until we get on the interstate about 8 minutes later. Then we were both, how did he miss it? To this day, I don't know if he figured I'm not going to ruin 2 kids' lives for a little bag of pot, or if he really didn't see it. And for karma lovers, I was so wired from the experience. I was speeding a tad, and ended up getting a $100 ticket and a lecture from an angry state trooper. Bought an i5, replaced my Pentium, returned the Pentium in the i5's box and got my money back. Free upgrade, but not really worth it because it was 2 years ago and I'm still paranoid I'll get caught, eventually. I once climbed onto the top of an abandoned grocery store with my friends and someone saw us, so we jumped down and ran. I have a few. All of these are from when I was much younger. I stole a couple grand from a previous job. Owner was too lazy to come in and I was the only employee. I ran from a cop that tried to pull me over for speeding. He had to do a U-turn and by the time he was able to get back up to speed I had already swerved down a bunch of back roads. Someone was stealing from my car and my neighbor's cars, so I stayed out one night to confront the person. Had my grandpa's old hunting knife just in case. He showed up that night and when I pulled him out of my car he fought back. He was bigger than me and aggressive, so after a couple minutes I grabbed my knife from my pocket and jabbed it between his ribs. Guy stared at me and pulled back. I could feel the knife scraping bone as he did. He stumbled off bleeding. My car was never broken into again. Don't know what happened to him. I did a lot of stupid stuff when I was younger. Transporting drugs, running from cops and just generally doing stuff I shouldn't have. I'm now an adult with my own home and don't break the law. Drove from Canada to Miami without valid driver's license. There were 2 of us, and both of us thought we could get away with some sneaky business on the other. My friend had forgotten his driver's license at home in Canada, but didn't want to worry me, it being his vehicle and me only having a beginner's at the time. Me, being sneaky, thought he would never find out that my beginner's license is expired. It was my friend's car, so if anything does go wrong while I'm driving, like being pulled over, I assumed my buddy would just whip out his license and registration and we'd be all good. We both had quite a surprise in Miami when we did find out about the other situation. My mom used to let me drive around the neighborhood without a learning permit. I committed fraud in high school. I had a big old wheel of raffle tickets just lying around in my house. I got this idea to sell them in conjunction with my school fundraiser to make it look legit. Charged $25 a cute a piece and made $75 in 3 days because people were buying in bulk. I took names and numbers and told them we'd call them if they won anything. Eventually got caught when I called a woman from the house phone, gave her a phony address and told her she won a $250 Starbucks gift card. Was grounded for a week.